Hey everyone, got a super exciting and informative conversation for you guys today as I get ready to sit down with SC Mendes, who is the best-selling author as well as a co-publisher and co-editor of the incredible extreme horror line Bloodbound books. Bloodbound books, amazing. They deal with some of the best authors out there, including Daniel Volpe, Christopher Triana, Lucy Leitner, and several other amazing authors. And they also do a lot of good work as well. For example, if you show them pictures of yourself donating blood, they'll send you out a free ebook. They're constantly doing various charitables to help young learners out, young readers out as well. But what we're here to talk about is mailing list, which isn't always the most popular conversation to have at a party. But when you're a writer, a creative, and you've got something incredible that you want to be able to grow as big of a reader base behind so that you can sell as much of what it is that you're creating as possible, then you really can't ignore this number one tool, which is the mailing list. So SC Mendes has had years of experience by doing the best that he can to perfect this, certainly by proving what he has been doing. As a matter of fact, there was a period of time where he just wasn't doing mailing lists at all. And he's, over the last couple of years, been getting back into that for a very good reason, because it works. So we're about to sit down with SC. He's going to talk to us exactly what the importance of a mailing list is, what it's good for, how you should get the most out of it. And naturally, we're going to drift. We're going to do some side quests as we discuss some other aspects of writing and the publishing industry. So if you love books, if you love to write, if you've got some creative juices flowing that's enabled you to make some incredible things out there and you want to grow your base of customers, this is definitely a must watch. Stay tuned. Here we go. Thank you very much, SC. Really appreciate being here once again, man. Friend of mine and a friend of everybody else watching this. Of course, you are co-owner, the publisher for Bloodbound books, responsible for putting out some of the best extreme splatterpunk stuff out there. You've got some big cojones. You don't mess around. I've got some of your titles behind me as well. All great stuff. Thank you very much for being here, SC.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the accolades. It's really nice. It's kind of cool to see this splatterpunk and extreme making a new resurgence.
Yeah,
and it's very interesting to see how some people view it and how it was different from 14 years ago and how it's different from even 14 years before that when it originally started,
right.
or even longer. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on again.
Anybody watch this? Hate to burst the bubble, but this podcast today is not about the differences between splatterpunk and extreme horror. So our episode here is talking about probably the least sexiest aspect you can possibly talk about when it comes to writing, but possibly one of the most important aspects, certainly from an author's perspective, from a publisher's perspective. And if you're an author or if you're a reader who wants the best access to all these great stories that your favorite authors are putting out, it's going to be important for you guys too. And of course, I'm talking about the mailing list. You were saying that the mailing list is something that you didn't really focus on much, if at all, back in the day when you started out, many years ago. I'm not going to age you or Bloodbound. You guys have been around for a long time to make a difference in the genre. We'll just leave it at that. But why did you originally think that the mailing list, as far as everything that you do to get the books out there and to market yourself and your authors, why did you think that deserved to be on the back burner back then? And why do you think it's more important than ever before to give it a better spotlight?
Absolutely. And I would say now I'm very much on the mindset that authors, you need to start this as soon as possible if you haven't already. I will age myself just a little bit, so we did start.
It's on you.
Mine. And so you have to. I'm sure it's also there's other factors about like my background as well. If someone was in the background of marketing, they might feel completely different. But for me, before that, I was doing college and in email. I mean, I'm trying to go back in time to 2009 and what we had. And for me, email was like keeping in touch with colleagues. It was keeping in touch with students. I was a teacher, so I didn't really think about it as selling. I thought about it as communication, and it should still be communication, but it has other properties to it. And I think back then when we first started, my co-owner, Joe Spagnola, was doing things more in sales. And he had started us up with MailChimp. but our website was very basic. We didn't know how to just put someone in. Basically, at a convention, a Comic-Con, we'd have people write their names down on a piece of paper, and we'd enter them in. And I was like, I don't really understand this. Like, I was editing all the time, and I also didn't know what went in a newsletter back then because I myself wasn't getting them at the time. None. Like today, though, I have it's just constant. If I even buy something once, I'm getting like 5 follow-up emails from people, which we can talk about what's appropriate and what's not. So I just didn't understand at the time, and maybe it's from a non-sales background, but we had the emails and we were doing MailChimp. And since I didn't have anything really to send out, I just kind of stopped using it, and it just kind of went by the wayside. And then it didn't really come back until, right before probably 2020, which sounds a little crazy, but social media wasn't even that big of a deal for me for a long time. I mean, if I could really put it in context, it was not the powerhouse for me that it was before. So that's why I kind of ignored it. But now I'm realizing there's no way to keep up, it seems like. And in fact, if anything should happen, you have no way to contact your readers. Amazon keeps all those lists. Barnes & Noble keeps all those lists. If your social media site goes down, which is what we were primarily using when we eventually got on Facebook, we interacted with people on Facebook. If you lose that, or you get banned, or something happens because, your book is too extreme or whatever, you've now lost all of your friends, right? I mean, you can still find them probably if you have their emails, but you have this way now to keep in touch with them. And so it really becomes, how can I keep in touch with the people who want to read my stuff? Not just to sell things, but just how do I stay in touch? How do people know that we have a new book coming out if I don't have one? And I didn't see that at all before. And so now it really is a big part of it.
Very good. And what do you think has changed since then to make it more important? Do you think it's just people's response to it, the fact that almost every author now has some sort of a mailing list, so it's a matter of keeping up with the competition? Like, what is it, just reader response, and people just want to engage more? Maybe, who knows, we were stuck in a bubble for so long during the pandemic that now we just want any reason at all to interact with the things that we enjoy. What is anything you could put a finger on as far as popularity?
Again, so from my perspective, I don't know when it started to become real popular for more authors to do it, just from being my particular background. But, I think what you said about not having the interaction anymore, maybe it just started around 2019, 2020 kind of era. We were locked up, we weren't going places as much. It became much more important on that. Just overall, I've seen more people contacting me via email. So from my perspective, that's what I've seen. I wasn't getting a whole lot of that stuff prior. But yes, I would say now that it's become so widespread, maybe here's a better example. When something, I'm not going to say it's cutting edge to have a newsletter, but in the beginning, if a lot of the big names are doing it and, just a lot of publishing companies who are bigger and well-known, you don't really relate that to you all the time, right? Just like a lot of young authors don't really see themselves as a brand. That sounds very negative. Oh, I'm a brand. But we all are. Even if you're just a teacher, as I would, you have a teacher brand, and you don't want to ruin that with students. You have a certain way to connect, and so you might think you're not like those other authors. They're different, but that's not the case at all. And so maybe as things change, we're seeing that it's so widely used. This is a good thing to have, and really the difference is who's using it inappropriately and who's using it appropriately. And I think from not coming from a sales background, maybe I thought people used it inappropriately. And I still see that all the time. Like, there's companies that I'm getting an email every day, which I think highly inappropriate. I don't want that. Even when they're offering me money back and stuff like that. So maybe in my head, I kind of had it that way. And I think mindset is a lot of stuff that authors have to break that barrier. And now, as you said, there's been an explosion. More people are online just in the last 4 years. And so they're seeing, oh, wait, this isn't such a negative thing. There's pros and cons to everything. And so we're becoming more okay with using it and more okay with receiving it. And as you said, it should be engagement and there should have a purpose. And I know we're going to talk about some best practices, but how are you using your newsletter list? And I think that's really what's crucial. So maybe as we see more people doing it, we understand it's for us too, and not just big names, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's, you nailed it on a few different really good points on that. And the one I really liked is using it appropriately and not hammer people over the heads with it. And I think that's even so much more important today, as, kind of like what we touched on. There's so many more people that are using the mailing list now. You don't have to read them all. If you've got one person that's firing out and just hammering you over the head every couple of days or so, and you've got one person that it's going to be there every Sunday, you enjoy it, that's like clockwork, you can set your watch by it, you're going to keep up with that, and you're just going to block this other guy that just won't leave you alone.
Right.
Every time you turn around. So now, as far as mailing lists go, and I know that was a big thing that I really wanted to talk to you about when you first mentioned it, and something that even from a year ago, I like to think I've been becoming more familiar with mailing lists. I mean, I even have a newsletter myself, although I suck at being regular with it, and we'll talk a little bit about how much that's hurting me. But how do you go about finding those people to put onto your mailing list? Because I've heard of some people that'll have, 30,000 people. I think I talked to somebody from the AuthorCon in Virginia not too long ago, and he was saying, yeah, I've got about 30,000 people on my mailing list. And I'm thinking, that's just phenomenal. I mean, that's guaranteed sales every time you put a book out. That's incredible. But where do you get these people, and how do you get them onto the list?
That person maybe should be sitting here instead of me. We don't quite have 30,000. In theory, though, we did have a much later start. You would think, though, if I had been doing this since 2009, I probably could have amassed that, and they would have been probably a very solid list, I bet, that really wanted us. Yeah. So where do you get them? I don't know why it took me so long to figure this out, but one of them is putting a QR code in the back of your book that goes directly to your mailer. Very simple thing, because that it's a person who wants to be on there. So they've read the whole book. It's on maybe after the About the Author section, and it says, hey, you can even give your newsletter, give them a coupon. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the book. If you did, scan this code. You'll join our mailing list to keep in touch with us, and you'll also receive 5% off or 20% off, or you give them something for joining your newsletter. And that's really one of the first steps, I thought, because bam, it's right there. The other way you can do it, QR codes can go on your, bookmarks. So I go to a lot of conventions, and we give away bookmarks a lot of the times. Now, I know everyone has different budgets for marketing, but you can get mass bookmarks, inexpensive, double-sided. It's really not that much. And so if you're going to a lot of conventions, put them out in front on the table. There's no guarantee, but of course, if you're only spending a few cents for each bookmark, someone picks it up, you'd be surprised. After a convention, we just finished with Phoenix Fan Fusion, people will scan it. I want to check these people out. So they go right to it. The other thing you could do, you have a great book. So instead of just putting it on a bookmark that sends them to the newsletter, make a free digital download of a backlog, right? So for example, one that has been out for a while, maybe it's got a ton of great reviews. So the book that I currently have on ours, we have a free download. It's got around 500, 600 reviews, something like that. It covers a couple different genres. And so people look at it, they scan it, they're going to go to our website. It's going to give them the ebook. All right. So it gives them a free ebook. But the minute they scanned it and got it, the way to get the book is to put in their email address.
Perfect.
There are ways of picking the people that are probably correct. I'll say this right now. Don't buy an email list. I mean, some people, when they hit 100,000, they have 30,000. I'm assuming they don't buy those things. But every day, I'm bombarded by marketers who then, hey, would Book Out Books like to talk to us about mailing lists and this and that? What I find out they're doing is they pay somebody else for really big lists. Then they send it to us. And one of the huge problems with that one is when you're sending people completely unsolicited, you get a lot of spam complaints. And we can talk in a little bit about that. In fact, on my last one, I had a 60% open rate on my last email.
That's fantastic.
But I did get 2 spam complaints. And so I was like, okay, well, it's good to know. But if you get too many, that's obviously a problem. And so you try to segment your lists, and we can talk a bit more about how to segment them correctly. Clearly, I'm learning. But maybe I might have clicked a button where it was people who did a contact me. So we have different forms on the website. One is just to get in touch with us about something. You have a question. So maybe they submitted the contact, but they didn't want to be on the newsletter. And I might have hit the button that put anyone who's contacted us as well as anyone who's bought from us, because your website can actually manage a lot of this for you if you don't have MailChimp or something like that.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that's what a fantastic idea that is, as far as that QR code. And is that pretty simple to do? I would think that, like, how would you go about getting the QR code for, say, a free giveaway or a newsletter? So when they sign up, they get that free giveaway as a thank you for signing up kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think there's a couple ways about going about it. I know everyone who's listening they have to adapt this to them, because I'm both a publisher and an author, and I was the author first, but I wasn't really selling stuff that early on. I was still just writing more for myself and selling in different markets. And so then I was the publisher. Now coming back around, I'm seeing how much people want to talk to the author themselves and not so much the publisher. But all this is adaptable to you. So we're all on a budget. I have to have a website. That's something that's massively important for me. So through my Wix website, I can do all of that. So they have a little section that creates a QR code for you, and it tracks it. And then I can easily download that and paste it into any book, any part of the website, the contact forms. The Wix website will I can upload the free book, because obviously you're like, how do you get this book? You get an email, someone subscribed. Are you telling me I got to go in, type and say, hi, thank you, here's the book, and then attach it and send it back to them? That destroys it, because if you are fortunate enough to get 30,000 people, you can't be doing that.
Right.
So Wix will house, because I have the unlimited, like storage, we can put videos up there, we can put everything up there. We can house the EPUB or the Mobi file and whatever it becomes in the next 2 more years, right?
Yeah.
You can house it on the website, and then as soon as they put in their email address, it goes into a category for my email marketing that says that they clicked on the city QR download. So I know that that's what they clicked on. They automatically get the book sent to them. Wix handles everything. Now, there are some other companies that do the same thing. You probably heard of BookFunnel and other ones like that. Now, those are paid as well. I don't know what MailChimp will do for their paid. I know they do some of it free, and maybe BookFunnel does some of it free, but there's always a threshold. They'll be like, okay, we'll give you free to like 1,000 subscribers. Once you get over that, you've got to start paying us, because now we have to start managing things. So I think authors at some point have to invest in one of these programs, because if not, they're going to just be getting these emails and having to shoot it back and then keeping them in an Excel spreadsheet, possibly. They don't have.
And that's just a lot to manage on top of everything else and all the other marketing stuff. So I think that, the more automated you can get, sure, it might cost you a little bit, but it seems to me that it's a good ratio, I think, of value that you would get into that.
Well, I guess one thing, if I'll mention one more step forward, this is again with free books. There are other sites. There's one that I know of. I think I mentioned one she was called Book Cave, and a couple ones like that. That what they'll do is they have their mailing lists already, and so you can put your book up for free on their website. So let's say you don't have a website, you're not ready to commit yet. You can just give them your book for free. They will advertise it for free for you, and everybody who downloads from their site, you'll get their email address, and you can export it in CSV or Excel. They'll give you that aspect. And so again, you can get it if you want to, like, okay, I want to build up a couple, but I'm not ready to pull the trigger on like the $89 a month or whatever it is, right? Yeah. So that's another one where you can get free books out there that you could also then snag it, and you're using someone else's system, basically. So it's a possibility. Plus, I guess another hope is all those free books go out. Maybe you'll get some reviews. Who knows? But
right. Right, exactly. There's never a guarantee on that stuff. But at least that seems like it's a lot more organic. And as soon as you said, talked about how you got these wonderful people that are offering you these big, huge, juicy mailing lists, and all you have to do is pay them every month or whatever to get these mailing lists. And I'm thinking you might have had some, somebody's grandma who filled out a survey when she was
doing groceries, and now she's on the list, and she's going to get an advertisement for sign up for Bloodbound Books, and she's thinking, no.
Yeah.
So you're getting all these people. It's just not an organic way to grow. I mean, you're probably better off standing on the corner with a tin cup or something, and and that's the big thing I'm finding even with YouTube as well. You see everybody's doing subs for subs kind of thing. It's like, it's great. It'll be good for the ego, but you're not really trying to grow your ego. You're trying to grow your brand, your product.
Right.
So, and just having people that just are not for you and you're not for them, it's just not a good relationship.
Yeah. Because something about the newsletter, maybe this is going to jump into the other thing. It should be a mutually exciting thing, right? Like, I'm going to send you something that you want, right? I think when we talked about the influencers, this shouldn't be it shouldn't be a miserable thing, right? Like, the hope, if it goes right, is you really dig our books. We were happy that you dig our books, and so we'll send you a free one with the hope. And of course, when influencers get too big, we then start to realize that, they can't read everything under the sun. And so then you reevaluate. But it should be, you want this, I'm going to give it to you, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship. You want the readers to be happy. No one's upset, right, when they get the value that they paid for.
Exactly.
That's okay. It's only when they feel like, wait a second, you're taking, and I'm no longer getting value. And that's really where it comes down.
Right. And speaking of that too, now, have you found there's sort of a happy medium as far as, how much sales pitches you have in a newsletter compared to things that you just put out there to engage people by giving them sort of maybe a bit of an insider and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. As an example, I mean, this is maybe more the extreme end, but, throw a name out there as an example, Brian Keane, where he'll have, you've got to pay for it on his Patreon, but people do that. And he's just going for his daily walk. It's literally called My Daily Walk. And it's him just talking, and it's cool. I enjoy them myself. And then obviously he's going to come up with these releases, and, to get away from Brian Keane, just anybody will come up with releases, and they'll say, hey, I just published this, buy my book. Because you want to be able to have access to when people are coming out with new materials and things. But have you figured out sort of a happy medium or things that people should do so that when they say buy my book, they'll be like, well, yeah, of course, I follow you. You got me. I'm in your circle.
Have I figured it out? I will say yes, I have. But you mentioned ego a little earlier, and I think not so much ego, but personality. We all have a different personality, what we're comfortable sharing, and so every author has got to do something more. Too many times we get in our own perspective. Like I said, I didn't think newsletters were important because I'm like, well, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm not in that world. It didn't make sense as a teacher. By the same token, I love Brian, and when we were up real early at AuthorCon, I saw him. He was doing his walk. He was like, oh, and the Bloodbound crew is having their coffee over here this morning. And I was like, this is super weird. But we waved, hi, we talked. I'm like, well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think, do I actually, can I do that? Can I walk around with the thing? And that's when you realize, like, some people are just better at certain things, right? Some people love to share, and there's nothing wrong with it. I've been told a lot. They're like, oh, you know what, Essie, you got to share more about your personal life. You got to do more about this. Well, when you try to tell that to someone, I get that it works for you, and it might not work for me because that might be not something that's actually in my nature or even something that's good, because I'm thinking maybe people don't want to hear about that. I know on social media, again, it's totally different. So people have to take this from their own perspective. If you want to share personal things, you should, and you should find ways to engage with them that you can. But I don't always do the personal stuff. So the happy medium I found is this. One, I try to only do one email a month. Now, there are people who do even less than that. So Joseph Sale, you met him at AuthorCon, fantastic guy. Really like working with him. But he is like, he'll do 4 a year. He was telling me, maybe 5. But he really tries to hone them in and he doesn't want to spam anybody. He obviously doesn't have as much to keep up with as Brian Keane. Brian Keane probably has a lot. I mean, he's got the bookstore now too. He's got years of just back catalog, and there's so many people he can bring up. I was reading this one the other day. He will share about, old pictures of the wedding, from a year ago that just kind of happened. I read his last one. what was some of the things that were on? I remember him talking about, the fire incident that happened when he's healing, and there's just so much going on that he has things that he loves to share, and he brings people into his world, and I think a lot of people like that.
Sure.
Sometimes I'm like, I don't really want people to know when I'm going through things. That's just my own personal. I've had issues with, and I'm sure Brian has too, I've had issues with both fans and colleagues who, when they got to know too much about me, it became a weird situation. They thought they knew me too well and that we were something that we weren't. And that's not something I want to present. So I would say everything with that.
Gotta keep safe.
Talk about my family. I don't want to talk about my wife. It's just me. So what I've found is if I could do once a month, and honestly, I try to give a little bit. So, October is one of my favorite times. I talked about this great feeling I have when I listen to certain songs that it just feels like October. It feels like I listen to King Diamond. So I asked people, hey, what's yours? What's your one that does it? I did an April Fool's not that long ago about a very strange, bizarre book I had coming out. And I had people write back like, WTF, man, are you serious? I didn't even respond to those. I tried to respond to my email, but I tried to keep it as a joke. But for the most part, I tell what's going on. I try to say what's inspiring my current work. So, me and Nikki Noor are working on the prequel to Succubus.
Yeah.
And so, it's called Slay Her. And I tried to talk yep. Thank you so much. I'm trying to talk a little bit about music in there and music that inspired us. And what do you guys like in music? So I try to give just enough about me that you know who I am, but not enough that you could be like, oh, I know he's leaving the house on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. And
right
there on Friday. Just, a little bit.
I know what his mailing is. He'll be at the P.O. box today.
Yeah. And not saying that the other authors like Brian and stuff do that. They've found what works for them. And so maybe the goal is to get closer to that. Maybe it's really becoming a master of knowing how I can share everything and still feel comfortable knowing that I'm, secure in myself. So I don't know how anyone will take that, but I like to tell people when I'm going to conventions, I like to ask if there's any conventions by them because I want to see them in person. That's a big one for me. I am not amazing at social media, also with my various different jobs. I am going to be putting in a post soon to say I'm going back to school for something. So not only do I teach school, I'm going to be going back, and I'm actually going to say, hey, please join my newsletter. And I am going to offer a 20% coupon for the website because I want to get people more on there because that's where I can start to be me. I don't know that I'll be able to get on, and sometimes Facebook notifications are tough. So I always tell people when I'm going to an event. I always tell people when one of our authors are working on a new book. I try to release artwork first on there. I try to let people know about a manuscript first on there. So I try to use it for firsts, for where I'm going to be, for new releases, and just a little bit about myself. You won't know if I'm going to the dentist. You won't know if I'm having a health scare. I did a little bit about, I think, a family member in the hospital, only because I had disappeared in January altogether. And I needed people to know that I was at a hospital and I was taking care of a family member. So there are times when I'll break that rule, right? There's always exceptions to every rule.
Of course.
Right? Because I do want them to know that, hey, wait, I'm a person and you're a person. So it's finding that professionalism there. And hopefully that answered a little bit of it. I know.
It really did. And I think, and I hope that everybody watching this too, is that they can take that what you just said, take some of the pressure off of them, thinking that they don't have to become a character in order to make marketing work for them. They just have to tap into what's comfortable for them, what's going to keep them safe online, but also in knowing that there are a lot of different methods that they can use, that there's things that they can do, whether it's, like you said, Brian will have, his newsletter comes out every Sunday, then you can also get extra stuff of him going for a walk if you want to. If that's not you, that's cool. You can do kind of like what you do, where you essentially, and this is, I'm a little bit more that way, I think, too, in the stuff that I do. I think, because I haven't written enough newsletters, I really need to. I just wrote one last night that I need to put out. And I always struggle with that, too, I want to put enough of myself out to be relatable in the hopes that I'll attract those like-minded people. I kind of dig your vibe. I get it, man. I feel the same way or whatever. like I talked a little bit about some of the things I'm doing to manage my time as far as taking care of my own mental health. Maybe that's something that's relatable to people, but at the same time, I'm not going to go and talk to them about, like you said, hey, I'm going to talk to my counselor this day, or I'm going to the dentist this day, or, man, I had this conversation with my parents, and man, they really pissed, I keep all that crap out of there. At the same time, like I know, speaking of the author con, I saw Clay Chaplin McLeod, and I hope I got those names in the right order. Clay McLeod Chaplin. You know who I mean.
I do know who you mean. Yes.
Where he is a friggin' nutso extraordinaire guy, where at one point he's screaming at the top of his lungs and he's running around with the GoPro cam, doing everything. That's not me.
Right.
And then you've got, of course, John McNee, who's got Hail Santa over here and some other awesome books, where he was going around and he was getting reactions from people and then posted up immediately on TikTok. Or he went to the Hollywood Cemetery talking about W.W. Poole and their vampire that's there. And has nothing to do with his writing, but it's a way I thought was cool to engage with him. So that I think if he does put some writing out, oh yeah, I kind of feel like I owe this guy something because I've gotten so much value out of all of his TikTok videos and things. So I think kind of what you said, but I know I'm rambling to say, yeah, I got it. I think that really resonated with me, what you said, and I hope it resonates for everybody else watching this, that you don't have to become a character. You just kind of find out what works for you and then find sort of, I guess, a slot to put the you into that slot sort of thing.
And you made a good point on tips, and I already forgot that. So maybe you just tell people about how maybe you found a new method that was really exciting on managing your time, writing sprints. And so now it's actually something of value to other authors. Now it depends on who's on your mailing list. If it's just readers, you got to think like, oh, do my readers want to know about writing sprints? Is that actually what they want? And that's when you start to get into sometimes to segmenting. Since me and Lucy, I've fallen so far behind with everything horror business. We were trying to give free tips to people, and so we'd put them in the newsletter. But then you realize, you might not want to put those to customers, because do customers really want to hear about how to write? I don't know. So everyone will find theirs. And the other thing is, and you mentioned take pressure off yourself as an author. Joseph Sale does great doing 4 or 5 the year. As a publisher, I have enough to talk about. Sometimes we'll just talk about the Screams for Teens program. There's different charitable events that we're doing that aren't necessarily possible for an author. There's no way that I don't want to say there's no way. Everything's possible. There's almost no way that an author is going to have 12 new books a month, right? They're not stuff they're working on. So maybe they can give a little snippets. Maybe they like to give a teaser in it. It's like, hey, here's if they don't want to manage, because I tried to manage a Patreon for a while too, and you realize, wow, if you're not as consistent as someone like Keen or Volpe, like they are machines. They know Jeff Strand, I think, they're good. They can do that and they keep up with it. They can give you a free story, maybe even in every newsletter, or on a little payment on their Patreon, maybe $1 or $5, whatever it is. But they can do that. Maybe a newer author cannot. And so do not hold yourself up to these standards. So don't try to compare to the guys and girls who have been doing this for years, or the guys and ladies. Don't compare yourself to publishers. Really, don't compare yourself to anybody. You're looking to see what works and what doesn't, and it is a process to find out who's going to be on your list and who's not.
Yeah, 100%. And that seems like a really good segue too. And this is something I never thought about, that my ears really perked up, and hopefully everybody else watching this the same thing, is that you did mention about segmenting your mailing list so that certain topics go out to certain people. So I found that really fascinating. So can you maybe talk a little bit about that? Like, would you have certain groups set up and it's like, this is strictly for the writers, or this is strictly for the readers, or this is for everybody, or this is for a different category that I'm not even thinking about right now?
Absolutely. Well, I'm still trying to pick and choose how I do, because I tried to do the regular monthly newsletter to everybody, but now that I mean, 2 doesn't seem that bad. Spam complaints, if you got 60% open rate, so I'm not 100% sure, but there are ones like, so for instance, excuse me, one thing will be ARC readers. I was trying to keep in touch, as we said, with various influencers and just contacting them directly. And as we grow, I'm realizing, holy cow, like we said, as one person gets too busy, it's good to like, well, okay, you got to give that person a chance to breathe. They got to be more than just bloodbound, right?
Right.
So you find new people, but then you realize, man, my brain, I like to think I can remember everything. Absolutely can't. So now I've got a thing on there where I'm like, hey guys, if you want to be on our ARC list, we're starting to use NetGalley again. I also don't expect people to constantly check NetGalley for things. So I say, sign up on our list. If you want, I will even put my newsletter link in your comment section of this video, but I'll do stuff for just ARC reviewers. Say, hey guys, thank you so much for being a part of our team. We've moved now to NetGalley. Here's the 3 new books we have going on this month. Here's some links to them. Just go there and download it for free. And, if something's not working, get in touch with me. So that is a very short, succinct, all it is, hey, this is what's available. I'm not pressuring you to download it. I'm not pressuring you to review it. And I feel much better about that now. So that's my review list. Just blast it out. In the past, we used to blast it out with the attachment. But that was disappointing because there wasn't a way to necessarily track who was downloading and who was actually interested. Now I know that if I shoot it out, I can go back to NetGalley and I see who actually downloaded it and who has it and it's on their device. Whereas as an attachment, I don't even know. Maybe it got stripped in cyberspace. Right. So I have an ARC one. For example, when my schooling starts up, I know I'm going to be absent from social media live. And that is a big part of our sales. So I'm going to say, guys, only to customers. Thank you so much for purchasing in the past. It's been a while. I haven't hit you guys with the treat to say thank you. So here's maybe $10 off or $5 off. Because again, those people have bought from us before. So I'm going to give them the free money to come back. And if they didn't like the book they bought, I know that they're not going to use it. And that's okay. But I'm planning on most people using it. Now, I might not give the $5 freebie to everybody because some of you are the guys who scan the QR code at the convention. And You're not really a fan yet. You're just looking maybe for another freebie. And so that might not be good for me. If I keep giving away the books or giving away the money, go under. So I'm like, okay, let me reward the people who like us and who've already bought from us.
Right. Loyalty for loyalty kind of thing.
That's a great way of saying it. Loyalty for loyalty. So now I've got an ARC list. I've got, I've got the customer list. Then I've got the general, everybody who submitted a contact form or who signed up to the regular mailer. And that's where I didn't realize how great segments were. And so sometimes my segments are getting crossed. And I'm realizing, oh my gosh, I might be bothering somebody or I might lose somebody. But that's a risk I have to take as I learn it. And we can't be perfectionists. And I'm hoping that because I don't overly hit people and I think it's not overly selly, it really is just, here's the newest one. Here's some stuff that's going on. I'm hoping that people are like, oh, cool. They'll either read it or they won't. And they can either unsubscribe or they won't. But they won't necessarily spam. And that's the good thing about using a platform too, is there's always an unsubscribe button. And that kind of gets put in automatic. I trust my platform to do that for me. People trust MailChimp or BookFunnel to do that for them, I think. Whereas if you're doing it on your own, it's kind of hard. What are you gonna? You have to say, hey, please respond to this email if you'd like to unsubscribe. And I will tell you, around 2012, we did that. I'm positive.
Wow. That's so old school. And that's crazy. I never even thought that there was a time where you didn't have that unsubscribe button. I mean, I don't know if it's the law or if it's just one of those things where you probably should have something like that so you don't have to spam people to get rid of the spam.
Yeah, I know. I think it might be a law, and so that's why we were like, well, since we were using MailChimp, but we couldn't actually like use them or something. I can't remember. And so we would send out just from Gmail, or maybe we're at just host.net at the time. I can't remember. Oh my gosh, it doesn't have the automatic button. So yeah, again, now I think it's a requirement probably, and best practice, everyone has it for sure.
Sure. And speaking of best practices as well, so. And for a lot from what I'm getting from this too is that I hope everybody that's, this is a lot of information for me to take in, for everybody else watching this to take in. But I think the one thing that I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I would certainly encourage everybody watching this is and I'm terrible for this myself a lot of times, don't let overthinking be the barrier to entry. So it sounds like you really got to throw things against the wall and see what kind of works. So you've got, real live case scenario on, okay, I tried this out, this didn't work for me specifically, or hey, that kind of worked for me, how do I double down on that kind of thing, as opposed to I don't know what's going to happen, and then you just don't do anything, and then obviously you're not going to get results, and you don't have anything that you could even track for that. So that's kind of what I'm picking up, whether or not you're intentionally throwing it down. That's what I'm picking up too. It's at the end of the day, you just got to go for it.
Absolutely.
See what's going to work for you.
That paralysis by analysis, I've been guilty of it before.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why, one of the reasons why I can't walk around yet and do some of the things that come so naturally to other people.
Sure.
It's just like oh my gosh, how many times do I read? But Keen doesn't worry about that. And maybe because he's emceed so many things. He's just a good speaker, you know?
Yeah.
Put me in front of a classroom. You'll see a whole different man. I can talk differently.
Sure.
Put me in front of TikTok and so, you know, even just on YouTube. Now I don't know that I've quite got my thoughts, but man, a lesson plan that I know in my heart, I'm killing it with those kids. So just start. And another important thing to note is that, you know, we talked about, this is a whole nother barrier to entry that we didn't mention, but spam filters, not when somebody receives the email and clicks it, but just in general, I read stats from my own website with Wix, who will give me best practices, will tell me that around 20% of emails don't even make it to the inbox. And there's a whole thing about whitelisting. I don't even know quite what that means yet, because it is an entire science. As you know, the author can do it good and get really good at it, but if you want to be like the person who then sells their services to someone else, you've got to understand the intricacies of how to get around all those filters, because there are some people that I know have appropriately signed up, want to hear from me, but for some reason it's getting kicked in. Oh, here's a perfect example. I sent my wife my newsletter for the April Fools. I'm like, honey, just read this real quick, just make sure I didn't lose people too much, it makes sense. She goes, I didn't get it. I'm like, really? Okay, wait a few minutes. Send it again, you know, and she's like, I'm going, okay, check your spam. And so now I'm like, okay, after I send a newsletter, I should post on Facebook and say, hey, it went out, check your spam if you want, and then put another link in the Facebook post so that anyone who's not on the mailer or who didn't get to see it has an opportunity to check it out and then to join if they want to. Because it's true, how many times do we, you know, you send an email and you don't realize it got lost in cyberspace? I know it's rare, but these things happen. When you call a phone number, how many times do you call a phone number for the first time and they don't have their voicemail correctly set up, and it just this voice talks back the number? You're like, I think this is Bob. Bob, we talked a long time ago. Could you call me back? You hang up the phone. You have no idea Bob got it because all you had was that phone number.
Right.
And if it wasn't, a number got wrong or it got filtered incorrectly, he never got your message. So I want people to be in context. That's another one. Don't freak out if at first you don't get a lot of responses. And it doesn't seem like it's working. There's a lot at play.
And do you find that's effective as well, SC? Is that so? A lot of times, and I'm guilty for all this stuff. So if anybody wants to find out what not to do, I'll do a separate solo conversation about all this, and I'll tell you everything that you shouldn't do, which is to tell you everything that I do. But I'm going to change that now that I've had this conversation. So one of the things is I've always, I put out a newsletter. I think my work is done here, but is it really? Because you mentioned that a lot of times you'll post on social media, hey, I put a newsletter out, check your spam, add me onto your safe list, whitelist, or whatever the
terminology is.
yeah, exactly. So do you find that that's also an effective way to pick up new subscribers to your mailing list? And I've seen some people do this where they'll say, hey, I just put out a new newsletter, and then they'll throw a link up of that newsletter onto their socials. So that way you kind of killing two birds with one stone. Hopefully people say, oh, I didn't get that newsletter. I should have checked my spam box, or I'm not subscribed. Hey, that looks kind of interesting this week. Let me subscribe. Do you find that that's effective, or is it?
Well, I mean, effective, it depends, because we also know that Facebook has their own algorithms. Yeah. So how many people are actually seeing any of my posts? It's tricky, right? But I have seen some results from it. So it takes me almost no time to just write what we said. The email went, the newsletter went out. Hey, please check it out below. And if you have any questions, let me know. That doesn't take very long. So, and I have picked up a few people from that. But again, if I'm not on social media posting all the time, or sometimes it's just how much people engage with you, right? So if you don't post often and you don't have people commenting, then when that time comes to get the newsletters and you post your your newsletter on Facebook or on Instagram, maybe it's not as effective, but definitely still do it. I know I've picked up people that way. And when I posted the coupons on Facebook, definitely I've picked up people that way too.
Great. Okay. And one of the other things too that I really want to talk to you about, this is probably a good time to do that. So I know we've talked a lot about, how to get it started, the importance of a newsletter, why you should have one, some different ways of managing it so that you're not necessarily spamming people, but you're also making sure that the people that are getting a newsletter are the best fit for you, your brand, etc. Your product, and that is a platform. So I know you mentioned a couple of them. I know you mentioned, MailChimp. That's one that I used to use as well. And I found it was pretty decent. It's a small fee. It's, for the most part, pretty affordable. But I know one of the other ones, and I'll just give what I use as an example so you can tell me why I'm wrong, or maybe give some other examples as well. So I also use Substack as well, which I know has gotten some bad press lately about some folks. And I think we're far enough into our conversation that I'm not going to get shadow banned or anything by YouTube. But the Nazis have kind of taken that over. There's some pro-Nazi people part of that. But I'm kind of on the same point of Brian Keane actually made a mention about this in his newsletter, is he's not leaving the platform because, goddamn, the Nazis are not going to win and kick me out of my platform that I want to use. So I'm kind of with them on that. So I haven't, I found Substack pretty decent. So they're not a sponsor. I'm not promoting them in any means. I'm just saying this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
What about for you, or your suggestions to maybe that you have, obviously for yourself, but for some of the authors that you work with, as far as you should try out for this platform, or here's a top 3, this is why, choose what works for you. Do you have those conversations with your authors?
Well, you know what? I want to pause for a second and go back to the Nazi thing, because I think this is a great opportunity. In classroom, I would call it a teaching moment. I didn't even know anything about Substack becoming an issue, or as we say, what nowadays is problematic. So for new author, I just want to say this. Maybe it's more, I just want people to know this about me, but I really do think it will solve, or at least help, a lot of people's anxiety. How do you? Nobody's a saint in the entire world, right? Every hero we think we have, they have a backstory. They had something bad happen to them in the past. We don't know what's going to go on in the future. You cannot, or at least I cannot, constantly keep up with today's news and find out who's a Nazi today, who's a hater here, who's blown this out of proportion here, who said something bad about this guy. It is a nightmare. If you do that, your head will be constantly spinning. Maybe some people who are super huge, and Keen's been around for a long time. He's worked in the DC universe, right? He's done so maybe he's a person that people expect them to come out and just say something. I know that sometimes when it's about a person's book, you've got to come out probably and say something on that here and there. But I know that if I can't keep up with the news. I told you, right? I'm going back to school. I'm teaching. I got a couple of jobs. I care about people. And so if a few readers or a few people on your newsletter want to suddenly be like, oh my gosh, they must be a Nazi too, or they must be that, they haven't figured it out that you can't. Those people have an awful lot of time on their hands, because I don't know
more than I do.
Any author who's like, Substack's the only way to go, and they're God, and everything's great. Anyone who does that off the way, if you praise anyone that much, you probably are not as level-headed as you should be in this business. There's a lot of volatile people. So I say, try to relax a little bit, because I do know authors who are always worried. They're asking me, they're like, hey, I heard this about this and this about that. Should I not? Unless it's something that has directly affected you, and not but again, everyone's got their own personal things. I don't know what a person's particular trigger is. So maybe they feel they need to, like, you know what, I have to stand up for this. This is the one I'm going to not cross the line on, right? Or they draw the line in the sand, and that's totally fine. But I have a feeling that every company that I've used, from Amazon all the way down to Wix, there's somebody in that CEO corporation, probably a horrible person.
You dig enough, you're eventually going to hit dirt.
Right? Yeah, you're going to. So I just want people to, like, breathe for a second, because
chill out, people.
Yeah, the average person is not going to be able to keep up with the scandals, and there's a new one every week. Just like there's a new author in the
Yeah, who fell into grace this week or
this week, and in 2 weeks you'll probably forget. In 2 more months the company might be taken over by somebody else. So do this for you and take care of the people who are talking with you, and no one's ever going to like you 100%. And if someone would really drop you because you use a website that you can afford at the time and it's working out for you, and as far as you can tell they're not killing little babies, then you got to stick with it, right? I just want to put that out there because I think
I'm glad you did. And the way I look at it, it kind of goes back to, do you believe in ghosts? When it comes to that kind of thing, I think that belief is all about experience. So I think it's, do you believe that this is really a horrible place to operate in? And it's like, well, what's my experience? So I know anybody personally impacted by it. How do I feel about this? Maybe that's a terrible thing to do because it's because you don't understand what this person's going through and that person. It's like, well, I probably don't. But at the same time, it's like, do they understand what I'm going through and why this is working for me?
Good.
So
good point.
I think it's all about
understanding. Yes, sure. Understanding on both sides. And this is just success, and I think that's why we want to talk about it, because this is something I would put on horror business. Sure. It's an understanding. So by the same token that I don't want those people to judge me because I can't keep up with the news, when they go and put their rants on social media or when they attack me, I've got to say, you know what? This person has a reason for it. I've got to be okay with that, and I've got to be big enough to I got to take their stuff for a little bit and be okay with it. I'm not going to judge them for that being the hill that they want to fight on and stuff, because that's okay. We all have the own experience. And what if it is something that really, we all have things that happen in our past and our traumas. So again, we got to understand on both sides. So I'm not judging them, and I'm hoping that they, are not judging me. But if they are, I have to just accept that. I have to accept that and move forward. And that's a big thing for authors. It kind of comes down to those reviews, right? How many times do we see this stuff like, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a bad review, but I have liked it because the person maybe wrote something or they gave me something that I actually could work on. Sometimes when people tell you something enough times, it's true. We can't always see our own flaws. So, but anyway, that's a big tangent. I think you asked me a very simple question.
No, it's totally fair.
I don't. I have a couple people that I was really disappointed working with at one point. That was Just Host. That was a company I went through for a while. And it could be different now, though. But it was just it was a poor experience because they had auto recharge me on things, and I was trying to fix things with them, and it was just a bad experience. And when I lost that website, I actually lost a lot of great emails. My first emails actually to Brian Keene and JF Gonzalez were on there, and I didn't have emails for a long time because I used to just hit respond to people.
Sure.
So for years, you're like, oh, well, I didn't really talk to him, and we know what happened. JF passed away and stuff, but just in general, I don't have those emails anymore. It would have been really nice to look back and say, Dallas, Jack Ketchum.
I was just thinking that I've got his old emails. I'm not going to lie. Once in a while, I'll go back and I'll read them. I'm thinking, man, that was cool.
That was super cool. When we first worked with you, I wanted to say, how did I first approach you? I know we followed up after a convention, but all those are gone. And when we moved over from Just Host and I got a Gmail email, I got to talk with them a few last times for DOA3, but that was it. And it would have been great to see it. I kept my letters from Bentley Little because he was and so sometimes you keep them, especially when you're young and you're starting out. Maybe in 20 more years, I wouldn't care anymore. Who's to say? But you did. I lost that. So I'm not saying anything bad about Just Host, but you do have to care about what it was. So that was a website thing that I didn't want to use. I've heard great stuff about Substack. People tell me it all the time. I hear great stuff about BookFunnel. But in all fairness, I have not tried enough. If I find something that is somewhat working for me, I tend to be that guy that sticks with it, because I'm not savvy enough in the tech world and I don't have enough time on my hands because I am a publisher. So I'm dealing with lots of authors. Now, if you're an individual and your budget is just for you and you've got the time and the know-how, check a couple people out. I'm happy with Wix right now. My most frustration is that they're updating so often. They're always giving me things and changing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to stick with what I knew. But they're always offering a new feature. There's always something going on that I can do. As I said, I can tell you exactly how many spam complaints I got. I can tell you how many emails bounced. Obviously, a person put in something that was bogus, maybe. I can see how many people clicked what particular links. So when we put out the last email, we had I think 2 books that were coming out. I was going to Fan Fusion. Me and Nikki tried a new thing where we were putting the book on Kindle Vella before it was available because you don't want to charge people for a Patreon, but we want to give them teasers. So we wanted to see how many people were interested. And we said, hey, give us a poll. Would you like this free stuff on Kindle Vella, or would you just rather wait until the book comes out? So that's an engaging poll that some people took, and it gave me some information. But I could see how many people clicked the link to go to Kindle Vella to even look at it, right?
That's awesome.
So that's awesome. I know how many people clicked on the Hell Santa promo, or how many people clicked on whatever, right?
Sure.
I get an idea. So all those tools are built in. I think BookFunnel does that. I'm pretty sure MailChimp. I'm pretty sure they're all going to be comparable, because in today's world where we're all fighting to be the platform that is chosen, what tends to happen, it's like the rise and fall of the civilization. The platform starts off real great, right? Oh, come join us. They got all these perks. Everything's great. As they get really big, they realize, just like an author realizes, they can't get back to everybody. They can't maintain to keep that big of an infrastructure. Prices have to go up, and there starts to be a decline unless the right management is in and they know how to treat people. So I say, yes, do that. As far as working with other authors, we try to reach out to them, because I know most of our authors, well, this is not true. A lot of ours we've talked in the past are, sometimes we're just a one and done, right? And we've talked about how, as a publisher, you want to invest in a person who's going to continue with you,
right?
You know, because it does cost a lot of money. So with some of those, I'm like, hey, if you're interested, do these 3 things. I try to tell them, hey, at least if you got nothing else, make an Amazon Author Central, because even though you won't know who's following you, those will get emails from Amazon at least. So Amazon's helping you out. You know, if you can go the next step, get the newsletter. You can't do a website, just get the Substack, or get the cheapest thing you can do. I don't want to say cheap. That's got a bad connotation, right? Inexpensive for where you're at. So you've got to move on your own tiers. But a lot of times, a lot of the authors, I don't do that. Recently, I've been reaching out to more people in our anthology, because I realized, like, hey, we might not have individual books together, but when you succeed, I'm going to succeed. And if I succeed, you'll succeed. So I'm like, okay, you know, let me see what I can do. Put your new thing in here. Let me blast you out too. And, you know, let's keep in touch. So sometimes I give more to them as well. And I'm saying, hey, what new books do you got? We put a whole lot of ads in Welcome to Splatter Club 3 at the end, because they were all authors who were in there who have something new coming in. So I said, give me your QR code if you got one. I'll put it in the back. You know,
right.
It doesn't matter to me if Lucas Milliron gets it, right? I see him at Author Comp each time now. So he gave me this really cool QR code. You could even make it so it was a bearded guy in the middle of the QR code. And it goes to his site. It goes to
that's neat.
Link, or all of his stuff. Because again, I win when they win. It's not a competition. It can't be ego. So that's sometimes what I'm telling more anthology authors now. And now that we've talked about it, I want to blast out one just to all of our authors and say, hey, let's work. How do we work together? Even if you've only been in an anthology, because we can make this work somehow, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love seeing that as well, where I do see a lot of authors on social media that are, you know, they'll put out some sort of a promotional thing or something, or they'll talk up another author and they'll say, this guy's got this out, check this one out, and vice versa, because it really helps everybody out. And I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but we really are, as an industry, we're all in it together, you know. And I think that the more readers in general we attract, the better for all the authors. And, you know, it's like, hey, if you like this book, you're probably going to like this book as well. And then, you know, it just builds up the entire base for everybody, I think.
Yes. The one caution I would do, which sometimes gets out of control, and I don't know if this is my perception or this is what's really happening, but you said we build each other up. Now, how many times do we build up people that we actually haven't read or don't know too much about? And that's one reason why I do try to stick with people that I know. We've talked before that since this is my day job, well, one of them, right? Like I read horror constantly. So when I get out of it, I don't always want to read another horror book. So even when people give me free books, I'm like, I'm much appreciated, but I need you to know that I might not read it. And so, you know, authors shouldn't that overwhelm me again. Oh, because now I have to promote others too. And that's a lot on social media. They always like to put somebody up. Don't do it if you haven't read their stuff and if you don't connect with them. You can say, hey, I'm going to be at a convention and XYZ authors are going to be there and I've heard great things about them, and tag them. But I've always been leery about promoting or cross-promoting with anyone that I haven't at least done something with or read a story on, because, again, I don't know. And then that ends up becoming it could hurt other people's reputations too. Right? I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it does. And I think you need people that trust you as well, so that they'll think, I know, for example, for me as a reviewer, if I'm reviewing a book and a bunch of people are like, man, this guy sucks. Like, all the books he recommends are really trashy, so I'm not going to trust anything he has to say anymore. And then, likewise, we were saying, if you're recommending and talking up an author who you haven't read, somebody might go to them with like, man, I don't know what you were thinking. This guy's just not that good, or he's completely not for me, so I don't know why you suggested him to me.
Hi.
As opposed to your authors who you've read. Check this guy out, he's amazing. Wow, you're right. He really is amazing. And it's because of this that you knew exactly what I would like, and you were right. And I'll trust you now. I trust you now.
That's huge. Yeah, reviewers, that's big. I mean, how many times if everyone gets 5 stars, you start to quit, and maybe they are all 5 stars. Maybe all these people on my friends list are 5-star authors, and they could be, right? But again, it's exactly what you said. It's credibility. It's keeping the trust. It's being open. So I try to do people that I've worked with, and I'm like, oh, I know I like them. I've at least liked one story. So it makes me feel a little bit better that I'm promoting something or cross-tagging an author that I have some faith in. And if they've been in more than one anthology with me, I feel really good about that. So again, another thing that people should, because then how often does the person you were promoting that you didn't know all that well, they take the nosedive, just like Substack, right? Or whatever. You find out something terrible. But again, we all have something terrible about us that we're all working on. But now suddenly you have to backpedal. And now you read the book and you realize, oh my gosh, I didn't actually finish it. I read the first chapter and I don't agree with anything of the views in this book at all, or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I was like, man, this book is just one giant soapbox for this guy to like shed out his political innuendos or whatever. And it's like, whoops.
Sure, it's not for you. So, but speaking of new books and plugging, I'll do that. I love stats and I love really weird things. And in my newest one, I put in, and this matters. I think it was 2016. I want to say I have the stats in the book though. But there was a consumer magazine that put out that a person's email list or email address is on average worth about $89. So if you want to put that in perspective of like buying emails, because we're talking about a good solid email, if it's a person that wants you, it's got the value of $89. And now I don't know if that's gone up or gone down, but that is because you now have a way to stay in touch with this person. I mean, unless they change their email. So when we're putting this into perspective, that you have to pay maybe $100 a month for something, platform.
Yeah.
These emails that you're getting, this is an opportunity that, as you said, every time you shoot it out, you got a new book, they might pick it up right then and there. So $89 on average. If this person sticks with you you say you want to be a full-time writer for the rest of your life, right? This is your career. That's worth it. That's worth it to stick in touch with that person. $89. That's amazing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when I used to sell photocopiers for a living over the phone and whatnot, that was the big thing, is if you can get an email address, that was absolute gold, because you can reach them anytime, anywhere, in any fashion that you felt was necessary at the time, and it worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
Like Glenn Ross. You remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know it's maybe not applicable, but they had leads, right? Cold lead, hot lead, lead. And I'm not telling you to be devious, but I'm saying that's how that's how valuable it can be.
Yeah. So you got to have a big, huge funnel and...
Yeah. So if we're talking about pinching pennies, I know everyone's at a different level, but realize the value that you are getting to have constant communication with these people and to treat them very, very much like royalty, I would say. Joseph Sale actually mentioned that to me, and I loved it, so I want to give him credit for saying that. I think he got it from somebody else, probably. But that's what happens with good wisdom. Treat these people like royalty. If you're going to give something free, give it to them first. If you've got a new piece of art or a piece of whatever, show it to them first. I know everyone, maybe you do Patreon first because you get some money there. But if you don't have Patreon, treat the newsletter like your Patreon, right?
Very good point.
Treat the newsletter as your Patreon. That's why I'm like, okay, I don't want to charge people to check out the new one with me and Nikki just to preview it, right? Because it's like 13 chapters, which is a good chunk, but it's not the full book. So, check it out, enjoy. Then you'll know when it comes out in my newsletter later. You'll know if you want it or if you don't.
So that's a great idea. I think in sort of wrapping things up a little bit here, Essie, and thank you so much for all the time here. This has been this has been awesome. This has been Newsletters 101 today.
Right.
So, and I hope that everybody watching this is getting as much out of this as I am, because, as somebody who does have a book coming out in a couple of months, who's not doing a lot of the stuff that you're talking about as being good practice, I'm definitely going to be listening back to this too and writing down notes as well, because there's a lot of this I'm thinking, I need to do this, I need to do this. One of the things that I'm wondering if I need to do or need to consider, and that I'm sure a lot of other folks watching this are wondering the same, is a newsletter. It sounds like it is a fantastic tool to have on its own, but do you feel that the newsletter should also lead somewhere? And I'm not talking about just pre-order links and links to go and buy your book or to buy somebody else's book if you're giving that person a plug, etc. But should it go to maybe a landing page as well that just that's always there, not necessarily a newsletter comes out every week, every month, what have you? And I'm thinking something like where you can lead them towards maybe a link tree or a website or your social media page if you don't have any of that stuff, but you use Facebook or TikTok, consistently. Do you feel that that's of benefit to have somewhere that people can kind of land to, that no matter what, now they have this place where maybe they can bookmark it and they can revisit it whenever they want to, even when your newsletters aren't coming out?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm pretty sure at the bottom of we always have the website there, if that's what you mean. Normally, it takes them right to the website, but yes, absolutely. In fact, maybe I can send you a screenshot. If you go even just to our Instagram page, right, you know how you can click the bio? Yeah. There should be 4 links, and it should go to, one goes right to the newsletter. And I think, actually, I have it still set up that it's maybe 20% if they sign up through that link tree. Okay. Now, since I have a website, I use Wix to create that landing page. Other people use an actual link tree, but since that's kind of a known thing, I've set it up so it's got just the 4 buttons. It basically looks like a link tree page. Okay. So it goes to there. But yeah, I mean, in the newsletter, it should have your website if you have one, or the link tree, so that they could go back and bookmark it. We should probably be honest that out of sight, out of mind, right? So unless you're very often going on, or it's your favorite author, your favorite publisher, you're probably very up to them, consistently check out. Everyone's, I wonder what so-and-so is up to. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you can't expect people to just randomly go to the bookmark page. They probably are waiting for your newsletter. So if it's an extra expense and a big deal, maybe don't do that. But yeah, I mean, have it. You go to our Instagram page and you click the bio, it'll be that link that I just sent to you. And it's very basic, and you can share the screen whenever you want, and it's got 4 things. That's it. Perfect. Not a lot.
Okay, just do that.
And one is to join our newsletter. One takes some new releases. The other goes to our Don't Fall Asleep podcast. And the other one goes to our horror birthday cards, because most people don't think that they know we have books, so those are our new releases, but they forget that we have other things. So those are them. So that way, if people find me on a social media site, they can automatically get there. And that's my Facebook profile has that one. My Instagram has that one. I'm not savvy enough, but I'm pretty sure my TikTok has that one. They all should go to that landing page so that right away people know exactly what we do. They can join the newsletter. They can favorite it and see stuff right away.
Cool. You just sparked an idea and a question as well. And I know I'm terrible because I said a moment, so we'll wrap this up with this. But one more thing. You mentioned birthday cards. Is that something that you would suggest as well? And going back to what Joseph Sales, wise words to you as far as treating them like royalty goes. I mean, I know, for example, see if I can do this without hanging myself on my cord. And you guys have these amazing cards, and this is just one of them. So let's try to get that out of the glare here. There we go. There, kind of that. And then, of course, you open it up, and then you've got stripe in there. And I think this is absolutely awesome. But obviously, not everybody that signs up for your newsletter is going to be like, you know what? I think you should also know exactly where I live, so you can mail me random things like birthday cards. But would you maybe set something up where you can automatically send them out like a digital birthday card? Obviously through their email. Do you have that?
Yeah, here's what. Well, so for me, I'm gonna say no, and I'll say why. But maybe I'm totally wrong, because I have to get all that information, and so sometimes, as you know, it's hard enough to get people to sign up. We're offering free books. A lot of times, you can you can click which fields need to be required, right? It's nice to have a first name, gotta have an email address, so that's a must.
Right.
And you can add other fields. In my experience, the majority of people, they want things to be as simple as possible. When you go to the like I get from the dentist, they send you the birthday card, but they got everything in your blood samples, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that I can get everybody to put in, unless you write something like, oh, hey, add your birthday and we'll give you a free gift on your birthday. Like I'm saying, and it becomes a digital card with a % off. But I think in that rush moment, they're like, okay, I'll check you out, right? Well, we'll check you out, put in my email. A lot of times I don't even get a first name. So I've gotten to the point where I don't even put that in, because then that's another level. Like you can do mail merges where it says, hi, John, hi, Rick.
Yeah.
But, people know it's a newsletter now. There used to be a time when you thought it was being said, oh, just to you, he knows me. And I know that's nice. But again, now that everyone's doing it, the veil has been pulled back. And we know that it's not one guy writing it to everyone, right? I know that sounds silly, but some people, when they see their name, they feel... So I just do the greetings to everybody, basically, But maybe that's a good idea to offer it, but to not make it required. Because if we make it required, I'm almost 100% sure people are not filling out birthday. They probably don't want to give you their email, their phone number. I get phone numbers for website orders because, you got to get in touch if I have to. But I'm not calling people phone numbers, for the most part.
Or if you're mailing international, you need a phone number sometimes to get it over the border.
Yeah, I gotta check in. I've got to make sure that this is going to be there. Sometimes the company that's going to mail it actually wants to have a phone number because they call when they're coming up. We've done some things where we've had discounted sales, and I actually send the book directly through the printer, right? Because there's no way, if it's being mailed to me first and then I'm mailing it to you, I can't give you the same discount. So if it's not a signed book, I'm giving you the discount by giving you, it's a direct sale, right?
Yeah.
So they sometimes need the phone number to check in, like, hey, your gate code didn't work, or where do I leave this package?
Right.
I got a buddy of mine, he gives it to Amazon. Amazon's got a code to his garage, puts the thing in there.
Nice.
That's wild. I'm not ready for HAL 9000.
No kidding, huh?
Right? I don't want that. But some people might. So I think actually you landed on a good idea, and maybe I'll write myself a little note saying, offer it. But don't require it, because the more you require, the less people usually want to do. And unfortunately, I think readers are better because readers like to invest time. We know that. But the average person, let's be real, they don't want to invest that much. But maybe they really do like your books. You're a short splatterpunk, awesome. They're like, dude, rock on. If I can just give you my email and my name is like Bob, that's fine. And I'm done. I don't want to give you anything more. And
it's like, looking for a relationship, just I want a little bit of something you got, and that's,
Yeah. Good. And let's also, the same reason I said I didn't want to give too much personal information about me, gotta respect the people. Maybe they're like, you know what? I really don't want you to know my birthday. I don't want you to know these things about, and then they feel like you're trying to, maybe then it starts to become I'm just an info mine and he's just mining me for that.
Right.
So, we just gotta all respect, we gotta put ourselves in the other people's shoes and try to understand perspectives. And that's, I guess, my answer to that one.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. And I think it's something, you made a lot of really good points regarding that. And it's like, is it really going to make that much of a difference? Maybe you might have 10 out of 1,000 people that are willing to share that, and it's kind of cool, but is it worth the time? And is it worth maybe throwing other people off to have that in there? So I guess it's something that's worth considering. So very cool. No, thank you very much again for this essay. So are there any, I guess, the stage, of course, has always been yours today, but is there anything else that you would offer or throw out there as far as any, giant pearls of wisdom or anything that somebody said to you as far as, mailing lists from sort of a high-level overview that inspired you or that really helped you out, or something that maybe we didn't talk about that you think is important for people to know before they finish watching this and go off and arm themselves with a successful newsletter campaign?
I do feel like we covered most of it. We talked about, not beating yourself up, find your personality, how you want to engage. A lot of times we engage the way we want to engage. But don't be afraid to throw polls in there. That was my first poll in the last newsletter. The more you learn about other people, the more you can tailor it to them. And you will find out if you are actually giving people what they want. So again, don't be afraid to try things. And when we try things, if we try them in a way where we're respectful, I don't think that you bother people. I really don't. I think people are understanding. So as long as you're not truly spamming them like all the time, you have something to say, don't buy the list,
Right.
do some of the legwork, find what works for you in terms of pricing. All those things are important. Don't feel like you have to have the website there. I think we've talked about plenty of baby steps to get you up to that point. And the most important one, I think, was we just talked about being a person and being a level-headed person and understanding and not getting frustrated. Maybe that's the biggest one. And not getting frustrated when something doesn't work right away. Not getting frustrated, not taking it out on anyone, and not going like, this doesn't work at all. And I give up on my newsletter. Because how many times do you see that person then goes to social media and says that? And it's like, but then in 2 more months, they've got a newsletter and they're happy again. And it's like, okay, pause always. If something is not feeling right for you, just pause in this business, because in general, everything is too connected nowadays. So you share, you overshare, you get angry, you get upset, and then it's fixed in 2 days. And people start to be like, well, I don't know. He's a very volatile person. Maybe I don't want to be subscribed to his newsletter. Unless they just like the fun of watching people blow up and then get calm again.
Well, it's Twitter.
I can't get on Twitter, right? Like, I don't understand it even personally, but so you got to be a level-headed person, and you have to just have perseverance. I think that's the thing I've asked of every guest that has come on every podcast of mine is that, hey, would you say that perseverance and sticking with it and is it? And they're like, yeah. And I mean, if you dive deep enough with all these people, you're going to find an individual who is screwed up, who has apologized, who has gotten better, who's learned. And I'm not just talking about personal issues. I'm talking about even in the craft, all of the stuff, right? And they're just always becoming better. And they're always striving to get better, and they don't give up. If it's something that you really want, and you're watching this show right now and you're saying, I want to be an author, but then 5 days later you say you don't want to, you don't want it enough. That's just good advice for any writing podcast.
Absolutely.
Right? You don't have these things people are like, you got to pound out this many words and be dedicated this way. I don't know about all that, but what I do know is you have to want it super badly, that even if you can only write 200 words a day, you do it. And you'll stick with something, and you'll persevere, and you'll continue to listen to things like this and ask for help and get involved in communities and, writers groups and networking.
Yeah, and find your people.
Yeah, and beyond just the Facebook swapping and the newsletter swaps, you invest in your craft. And so just do that, and I know that everyone will be fantastic. And that's probably my highest level advice if I could.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And that's one thing of anything at all that I found in this thing, is that perseverance is definitely number one. I think you got to be a little crazy too. Level-headed crazy, of course. I calculated crazy is that, you really should stop because this just doesn't work and you're banging your head against the wall and it's starting to show. But that's the time where you just got to keep doing it. I think last week I was telling my 8-year-old daughter who's having a lot of hard time with certain things or with something. I kind of gave a few examples, at her level that she would understand, like YouTube influencers or things like that. And I said to her, it's like, you see these people out there in, whatever field that are extremely successful. What you don't see is that those people, the reason they're successful is because they're the biggest losers you'll ever meet. They found as many ways as possible to lose, to screw it up, to have everything get thrown at them that, should have taken them off their tracks. And they found a way to overcome that and to make it work and to learn from it to the point where now they're extremely successful. Geez, there's a reason that, I've been reviewing books for over 20 years, but I've just finally come up with a book about how to do book reviews. So it's like,
what? How can that be, right? But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Mr. Beast, he's like the world's, the number one YouTuber in the whole world, and you hear about his story, which is pretty popular now. It took him 10 years to get anywhere. He sucked at it, and he was the biggest loser. He sucked, and now, of course, you would never think he's the biggest loser because he's the biggest success story now that we have.
We could have, again, we talked about this one. I think we could do nonstop on just the mindset of being an author, because when that voice comes in, that voice isn't real. Yeah, and there's whole tricks to that, because now we're talking about how you can implement everything we say, right? But if that voice gets to you or you don't see the results right away, that voice, that's a whole nother story to how to be that voice, right? So we can do that too. That's I hate to say it, but that's really where it starts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why is it that one person blows up and the other person doesn't, and yet they're craft? You read their books, it's like, they really are pretty much, they're good. I like both these people equally, right?
Yeah.
Why can that be? Why can that be? And I think a lot of times it has to do with the voice and how we feel inside and we approach, and those are the things that no one can see. Yeah, they can't see that.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Wagner had speaking of newsletters, and things that are good to put in there, is he had, I think, the number 10 or 20 things that he learned during his career. And I mean, Tim Wagner's had a fantastic career, and he's a day jobber. You know, he teaches English as well, and he does workshops. I took his workshop last year at AuthorCon. It was great. But one of the things that really stood out to me is, you know, there's no, like what you were saying, and with anything, with newsletters or with writing a book or writing a blog post or what have you, is that, you know, there's no set precipice for where you should be at. There's no, you have to put 6 pages in, you have to do this. For him, it was always, let's just see how far I can take it. And he said, you know, after doing this for, I don't know how many years, 20, 30 years that he's been doing this for, his mindset is still exactly the same way. And I mean, he's won all kinds of awards. His mindset's still the same, where let's just keep doing this and see how far I can take it. And that's kind of where it's at. And I thought that was pretty resonated. It gives you a chance to chill and just see how far you can take it. You know, for you personally, you know, you don't have to take it further than that person or not as far as the next person. Just how far can you take it?
Amen. Perfect, man. That's exactly right.
Thank you very much, C. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet.